Most arts organizations are really excited about the promise of efficiency. And I think general digital marketers have that too, right? Like, here's a task that I'm doing over and over again. How can I do it faster? AI does that. But when it comes to strategy and using these tools as thought partners, I think that's where they really shine. And as a digital marketer, someone said to me just yesterday, you can make a plan or you can make a strategy. And I think if you don't have time for strategy and you're living in a world of planning, 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 campaign, 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 AI can help you step it up and make it easier to think about things like target audience and how will somebody perceive this language.
Welcome to How I Grew This, where we dive into the world of digital marketing and connect with leaders in the space about how they're scaling, evolving, and growing. All right, welcome to How I Grew This. Today, we are joined by Jen Taylor, Director of AI Strategy and Integration at Capacity Interactive. Jen has over 15 years of experience building and engaging audiences across the stage and streaming. And before joining CI, she led digital audience growth for both ad-supported and subscription streaming at A&E Networks, which is where we first met, Jen. And now she's focused on helping arts and culture organizations adopt AI in a way that supports the work and amplifies human creativity. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's so good to reconnect many years later. And we have Adam here on the line, of course.
Everyone. Hi, Jen.
Awesome. Well, Jen, you were over at A&E for almost 12 years. I want to dig into that for a little bit, but you are now at a really neat opportunity that I heard you say is a little bit of a dream job. So can you talk to me about how you fell into this new role and a little bit about what you're working on over there?
Absolutely. At my core, I am a theater nerd, and I actually came up doing marketing for off-Broadway and Broadway shows. So that has always been my love. So when I reconnected with an old colleague who was at this agency that exclusively supported arts and culture organizations across the US, I was really interested in kind of what they were doing and perhaps working with them. And then they said that they wanted to build out an AI function. And that is when my ears really perked up, because by that point, I had already dug or jumped full stream ahead. I'm going to mix all the metaphors. I jumped ahead, dove in, all of those things with AI. So when they said that they were looking to help arts and culture organizations adopt and use AI, how could I do anything but join them and go down this journey with them?
Love that you found something that, blended your passion and your interest in today's world. What got you interested in AI? Was that something that you were just kind of digging into in your free time or trying to stay up to date as you were navigating A&E's projects, or how did that come to be?
Yeah, so while I was at A&E, I went to a marketing summit, and it was all about AI. And I left the summit and went back to my office, and I put together a 7 to 10 page presentation on everything that had just been talked about. And I went to the full marketing team and was like, guys, you've got to hear what I just learned. So that's when I first was like, oh, wow, this is interesting, and started being like, oh, maybe we can use it to help brainstorm. Let me assess this email that I wrote to see what my tone of voice is, and kind of really, really basic stuff. Not long after that, I was at dinner with my cousins. And one of my cousins had just started this new job, and she was like, yeah, I use AI every day. And I was like, I don't understand. Please show me how. And she pulled up her computer and she showed me kind of the chat she was having and the things she was digging into. And that was my moment of, okay, I must now use this every single day. And I'm going to see, even if I don't think it can be helpful, what it can do.
Fascinating. I want to know what some of those first AI use cases that were coming up. You mentioned the email. You mentioned some of the things, but was this early in AI's trajectory, or were we already talking advanced use cases for some of your sophisticated campaigns?
Certainly not. No, this was definitely early use time within the first year of ChatGPT existing. I think where I really started to see its strength and its power was when I partnered with a couple of founders who had an idea for an app that they wanted to build. I'm going to be a little mystical about it because it hasn't actually been built yet, but they didn't really have time to put into it in the way that they wanted to. And they asked me if I'd be open to working with them. I used AI as my partner in that journey, from strategy to budgeting to I've never put together a pitch deck for an investor before. What are best practices? What are the pieces? Let me tell it the audience and get feedback on how they might perceive it. So it was that journey of kind of using it to start this business in so many different ways where I feel like I really came to understand the power of the tool and the potential use cases.
When you're approaching your clients, and I take it when you talk about your clients in the arts, we're talking theaters, symphonies, events, that type of thing.
Exactly.
What should they be thinking about as they approach the market and how to market themselves in the digital world today with AI?
Yeah, so I'm going to back up for a second because before we kind of launched the AI offering at Capacity, it was really important that we built it with kind of arts administrators at the core. So it wasn't just me saying, here's what I think you need, and I'm now going to give it to you. We actually went out to the industry and did a survey. We had over 100 people respond. And that's where we were really able to kind of get a feel for how the industry felt about it and what some of their challenges or barriers were. And well, I would say three things rose to the top. The first is I was actually worried, given we're working with people that it's so human, like arts are human. So I didn't
And they
know
should
how they
stay
would
that way.
I didn't know how they would feel about a tool that isn't human. So I was surprised and excited to see that people in the industry were curious and excited, more so than skeptical. But they were concerned about a lot of the ethics and having it align with their values and their mission. And then education and training was the number one barrier, which I've seen across most kind of surveys that I've read when it comes to kind of barriers and challenges to adoption. So coming back to your question of like, how should these organizations be thinking about AI? Well, I think it's kind of a phased approach. And the first thing I think organizations need to think about is what their high level POV is. A policy, being really clear internally with what is okay, what is not, the platforms and the tools that they want the organization or the team members to be using. And that sounds really easy, but it gets really nuanced because you might say, okay, we're using ChatGPT. Great. Can you connect ChatGPT to this? Can you use agents? So the things that even an approved tool can do has so much nuance that really needs to be thought through carefully. The second thing I think organizations need to think about is understanding what these tools are and how to use them. So training, how to prompt them, how to speak to them, how to build custom tools, how to use video if and when it feels comfortable, images if and when it feels comfortable, how to create audio, how to like the things it can do, whether it's execution or education, and then after all of that, we spend a lot of time digging into use cases that are directly tied to business outcome, business results. So for me, I think there's like two ways you think about AI. One is people understanding it and being able to find what helps them. And then there's from an organization perspective within a department, within a group, how can that group or department use it in ways that, you know, increases conversion on ads or helps you understand target audiences or helps you take copy that maybe speaks to your core and adjust it to speak to prospective audiences. So that was a very long answer to a very difficult question.
No, definitely, because I think, my expectation would be that many of these companies within the arts don't really have sophisticated tech stacks to begin with, or haven't adopted many advanced tools that they're already comfortable using on a day-to-day basis. So I'm sure there is a lot that goes into kind of making sure you understand their appetite and their curiosity, but also managing the cautions that they inevitably have about bringing in new technology, bringing in a whole new set of training, and one that is as sophisticated and full of mystery as AI.
Arts organizations do tend to lag in technology, but that's why I think it's so important for them to understand what this new thing is, because it's so accessible to everyone once you know how to use it.
Jerem, one of the first things that you mentioned was ethics. And because you deal with arts and entertainment companies, I think that probably means something very different to what the traditional marketer thinks about ethics. What are the hangups or concerns that your clients have about ethics?
Yeah, there are a lot. The first is ownership, right? We work in an industry where people make art and people make money off of making art. So the fact that these kind of AI tools used a lot of content and who owns that content? Who should be compensated? I think everyone should be compensated for the use of their art. So that is an example of one of the challenges. Another one is the environment, right? There's a lot of concerns around the energy and the compute that these tools require. And I can't solve that problem either. There's kind of varying degrees of publicly available information about kind of how much energy, how much water is being used. Perhaps it's not as bad as we initially thought, but what we can do is make active choices that help mitigate some of the risks. So, for example, if you're in a long chat and you change topics, don't stay in that chat because it needs to process everything that came before in the chat. If you open up a new chat and start that new topic, it's less compute. So that piece of it. And then I think another big concern is around imitation, right? Like you can ask these tools to do anything, to imitate anyone. And, we teach things like if you know something is copyrighted and you wouldn't steal it without a copyright, just don't prompt the tool to do it either. So I think some of the concerns, it's really in how people choose to use these tools, which is why I think it's so important to be active and be thoughtful when you're using them, how you use them, and to make sure that they are a thought partner and somebody who is enhancing your work and not something you're offloading your brain to. AI slop is real, and I think people can see when AI is used in a sloppy and lazy and poor way, but when you use it really well, I think it becomes invisible.
Totally. And that's something I've been thinking a lot about too, is where am I comfortable with AI showing up versus where does it feel quote unquote icky to me? And that is definitely where I feel that it doesn't belong, is when it is that human expression, that innate creativity of expression of a real human experience. And I feel like live theater completely encapsulates that. And you can't get that anywhere else. And I really hope that it stays intact. But to your point, in order for these theaters and other organizations to be able to create those moments and bring audiences in, they need to be efficient, which is why things like bringing in AI into the workflow of the administration seems to be a great use case. Can you talk to us a little bit about the AI toolkit that y'all have recently launched and where that shows up?
Yeah, so there's two ways we work with clients. One way is we partner with you. We come in, we talk about policy, we do training, we identify use cases. The goal of a partnership is not just for me to do everything for you, but for you to really learn what these tools are and how to use them. For those organizations that aren't ready or don't have the time or don't have the resources to go down that path, we built the AI toolkit. And the AI toolkit is built for arts administrators. It's 10 tools that you can use in ChatGPT today, right away. Very, very little training just to understand what each tool does. So, for example, one thing marketers need to do a lot is write different calls to action in your email. So, you're writing an email and then click here, buy now, whatever that action item that you want people to take. Well, we had a tool on our website that gave people alternative calls to action, but it was limited. It was only what we put in that tool. So I rebuilt that as one of the tools in the AI toolkit. So now you can click on, the CTA generator. You can either say what the CTA is that you're looking for alternatives for, or describe what it is you want the person to do. Instantly, you get 10 options, and then you can iterate with it. You can say, oh, it's for a ballet company. Like, oh, I only have 2 words. So it works. It is ChatGPT, but it's this thing called a custom GPT, which is an assistant that you can build to do what you want it to do. So when I just chatting with ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or Copilot, any of the tools, I tend to have very long prompts because you need to give it a lot of context. You need to be clear about what its role is, the task you want, all the nuance, the output, everything. So what these custom tools do is they take most of that prompt and put it into the instructions on the back end. So instead of coming in and giving it all of the information, it knows. You just tell it and it gives you what you need. So the AI toolkit is a really accessible way for arts administrators to dip their toe into this with tools that are already built for them.
How do you think about how this applies to some of the folks that you knew in your previous world of, digital marketing and a lot of that? Is there something that folks that work in digital marketing today could take lessons from what you're working on with these arts folks?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons so far is that most arts organizations are really excited about the promise of efficiency. And I think general digital marketers have that too, right? Like, here's a task that I'm doing over and over again. How can I do it faster? AI does that. But when it comes to strategy and using these tools as thought partners, I think that's where they really shine. And as a digital marketer, someone said to me just yesterday, you can make a plan or you can make a strategy. And I think if you don't have time for strategy and you're living in a world of planning, 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 campaign, 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 AI can help you step it up and make it easier to think about things like target audience and how will somebody perceive this language, or here's my plan, poke holes at it. Tell me where it does and doesn't align with each audience. So I think there's an opportunity from a digital marketing perspective to think about these tools as a partner in strategy in a way that I don't think everyone is exploring yet.
So to read back what you were saying earlier, is you see the kind of AI is 2 components within the organization: the personal assistant, for lack of a better term, personal kind of advice and workflow collaborator, and then like a team kind of department wide collaboration efficiency engine. If I were to predict, the future is to kind of help you get more strategic and get your head above water. What other ways do you think AI is going to continue to help us in the future? Like, what do you project AI doing better and better within organizations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think as we move forward and as the technology moves forward, I've been hearing a lot about AI only knows what you give it. The more information it has about you, about your business, the better results it can give you. So I think what we're going to start seeing is tools that can connect into more information to make it easier to get what you want out of it faster. I also haven't heard about it lately, but for a while, it felt like organizations with things like ChatGPT tasks were thinking about rather than you going into the tool and asking for something, that it would surface things for you. So, oh, you were looking into these three articles. Here's a fourth article you might find really appealing. So I think those are the two kind of directions, having more information about you and maybe surfacing things that you might not even be asking for, but it thinks might be useful or helpful.
That's what I've been excited to see with tools like Branch and the likes, of figuring out how to incorporate AI into things like dashboards where, oh my gosh, like looking through dashboards, trying to find data all the time, as opposed to you having to dig, actually surfacing, hey, these are the things that you go look for on a daily basis. So we're just going to actually put that right there when you log in. So figuring out ways to just cut out all of the digging and the manual work and surfacing either the insights that are most relevant to them or what they could be curious in or suggestions. And I think that is a really neat way that it's showing up too in a variety of ways.
Can I ask, without naming names, what you see people doing wrong, like incorrectly or misguided or just like spinning their wheels that maybe our audience can learn from?
Yeah, I think one thing I see a lot is people prompting poorly and then thinking that AI is bad, right? So it doesn't work. I tried it. I tried it over and over again.
Yeah,
It's not.
I'm guilty. I'm guilty of that. I'm very guilty. Yes. My prompts are like really lazy search, like blue sweater, and I'm mad. They're like, no, I'm talking about what it's made of.
Yep, yep. Another thing I've seen is the misconception that it's only for people at certain levels. So I found in the past when I've spoken to perhaps higher level people, they're like, oh, yeah, my team needs this. And it's like, you need it too. You just don't realize yet what you can do with it and how it can help you as a leader excel.
Interesting. So it's not just a workflow like optimizer, it's a strategy executor, strategy high level advice as well. That's really a good point.
Yeah, every time I speak to our board, AI knows what that deck is, how the meeting went, and you would be shocked at how fast I'm able to kind of make my next board presentation, accounting for all of the historical presentations that I've given, and when I tell it, how the board responds to it. So yeah, even at a strategic level, these tools can be really, really helpful. And I've found that I don't always know what the use case is for somebody until I sit down and talk to them and hear about what they're doing and how they're thinking and what their roadblocks are. And, if they had an extra 10 hours in their week, what they would be doing with it. Those types of conversations help unlock kind of where opportunity is.
I imagine in your role to be successful, and also just because you're interested in it, that you need to stay on top of AI trends and kind of keep an eye on where things are going. What's something that keeps coming back across your desk as something that you find particularly interesting or wonder where it's going?
Yeah. You mean as far as like, what are things that I'm seeing in the news or what are news sources that I really like?
Oh, well, I'd love to hear news sources that you really like. And then maybe any trends that you've seen pop up in those sources lately that you're particularly interested in.
Yeah. So there are tons of trends all the time. I'm trying to think what the most recent ones that have popped up to me. There's a couple of things happening. There's an interesting trend with just how the arts and media world is adopting and feeling about AI. For example, you have, Disney getting in bed with ChatGPT and suddenly Disney content being able to manipulate and make your own. And then you have, people being sued for likeness and copyright infringement. And then just this week, you have artists. I'm not thinking right now of who the artists are and what the organization is, but you have a music AI company that's now licensing some really big artists. It's fascinating to me, kind of some of the bigger players maybe benefiting and making agreements and how that impacts kind of everybody else. So that is an example of one thing I'm seeing. I'm also really curious about what the next type of AI is. So right now we do it on our phones, we do it on the computer, but there's a lot of talk of like, will it be something on your ear? Will it be a pen? Kind of how people, I'm going to say two things: what the AI organizations want us to engage with versus what people feel comfortable having. Like, I don't love the idea of AI all the time, just there listening, but maybe I'm in the minority and maybe other people are comfortable with that.
Not me personally. Where are you staying on top of those resources? I know you asked if that was my question, and I would love to get into that if you have some top resources to recommend.
Yeah, the Artificial Intelligence Show podcast is one of my don't misses. Smarter X, which is a marketing research company. They're very, very smart, and I've learned a lot kind of engaging in their mastery program and going to their conferences and listening to their podcast every week. Hard Fork is another podcast that I really, really enjoy. And then I get tons of newsletters like The Rundown and The Neuron. And then obviously just tons of people that I follow on LinkedIn and love seeing their posts and kind of how they're thinking as well.
That's a full-time job right there. All the
Yeah,
posts coming through, newsletters and everything.
it sure is.
Can be challenging. I am curious about, your days back when you were over at A&E and working with Branch.
Yeah. So when I marketed Broadway shows, it was how do we get an audience to buy a ticket to come to this experience? When I'm talking about, a streaming experience, it's still entertainment. It's not in a theater, with something happening live on stage, but it is still an entertainment opportunity that you're marketing to a person. So I think my whole career has really been about explaining to audiences, inviting audiences to have these experiences, whether they're at home by themselves or with partners or families, or in a museum or in a symphony, at a ballet, again, by yourself or with family and friends.
You talk about AI as kind of workflow optimization, both individually and as a team. And now you're talking about like engagement. Do you see use cases in your industry with your clients for AI, for discovery, for engagement, for personalization as well?
Absolutely. Two ways. First, AI does a great job at driving consistency. So we recently worked with a symphony that had a lot of different departments putting messages out into the world, and they wanted a consistent message. So we built them a tool that understands the brand voice, the style guide, and now all of the departments, whether they use AI to help generate some of that content or write it completely themselves and just put it in for feedback, can use that tool to make sure that messaging is consistent. I think similarly, AI can really help you understand both how your audience will perceive messaging as well as who is most likely to respond to your messaging. So I actually just built a tool internally for my content team. Our content team has this theory that is valid because Meta supports it, but we believe that content is the new targeting. So when you think about kind of marketing on Meta,
Interesting.
you can't just say, I'm giving copy for this one target audience that we think is our target audience, because the way Meta works is it wants options and it's going to surface the messaging for the person that it thinks it will best engage with it. So you need to have messaging that speaks to different audiences. So I built our internal team a tool where they can say, okay, here are the 3 ads that we've written, and here are the 3 audiences we want to reach. and the tool will review all of that copy. It will then say, here are the additional audiences I think this copy will speak to. And then it will say, based on the copy, based on your target, based on your campaign, here are 5 other audiences I think you should consider speaking to. And then if we want it to, it can output a first draft of the messaging to that incremental audience that should and could be considered.
I think that's exactly right. That's exactly what Meta says too, is that you need to diversify your messaging so we can find appropriate next audience for you.
So yeah, those are 2 examples. I could go on. Ways that like engagement can be supported by AI, I think we could talk about for 4 hours.
I've got another question, which is kind of on the wrong side. So I'm an arts administrator. I'm coming to you. What are some of the biggest problems you see that I have preconceived notions on, or like, what are the mistakes you're seeing your clients have before you engage with them?
I think it's less about mistakes that they're making and more about just not understanding what the tool can do. I think of it like a Swiss Army knife. I don't know how to use those things. And I know that you open them up and there's like 5 different tools and each tool does a different thing and each tool can be used in like 10 different ways. I think AI is like that. And if it's a tool that does one thing, like an email service provider, you're going to write and send emails. I understand what that is. AI doesn't work that way. So I think it's less of a you're doing this wrong and more of a people until you show them use cases that directly impact their work, it's hard sometimes to know what it is and how it can actually help you.
Makes a lot of sense.
I have another question because obviously you're no stranger to measurement and solving measurement challenges across many different brands and channels. So I'm curious, what does good measurement look like in this AI-enabled marketing world?
Oof, that's a tough question. And I don't think there's one answer to that because I think good measurement is good measurement, right? Like we have what we have. 50% of our marketing works, which 50% is it? I think it's less about, I'm trying to think about how to answer this because AI can't just measure things for you, but I think as AI is built into measurement systems, is adopted in different ways in different tools, I think we're going to have solutions that maybe we didn't have before. I think one place where AI really excels is in insights. So before you might have had all of this information about measurement, but either you didn't know what to look for or it's hard to kind of understand and take it in. I think where AI is really helpful with measurement is you give it what you have in a proprietary, safe way with no PII, and then it can help generate those insights for you. I also fully believe that nobody should ever take these tools kind of just because AI says it's true. Like if AI says this is an insight, you also need to go and validate that because at the end of the day, it is your work and you are responsible for whatever you put forward.
Yeah, and that makes me actually come back to something that I know I've seen show up in a lot of your work and writings is bringing that human element to what AI is offering and what AI is bringing to the table. So talk to me about that verification that you're talking about or any other ways that you can ensure that you're not losing the humanity when applying AI to some of your use cases.
Yeah, I fully believe in human-driven AI, and I think it starts at the prompt, right? I'm working with these tools and it's my brain, it's my strategy, it's my direction that's going into the prompt, that's seeing what it gives me, that's clicking all the sources, that is asking it questions and digging into kind of what I get back. And then at the end of the day, that takes whatever it is I take from it, that has my own kind of, I've read through all of this, maybe I'm changing perspectives, that then kind of goes forward. I do think, there are places where you use it and it's going to do something for you and you're going to have an answer and you double check it. I like to make sure I can still do everything myself sometimes just to keep my brain sharp. But at the end of the day, I think as long as it is an active process, that to me feels really different than a tool that pulls sentiment from the website, writes copy, posts the copy on social, and no human ever sees it. And people are doing that. And that is a choice that they get to make. I believe that leads to more slop.
Oh,
And I believe
ChatGPT
that when the
or
human is in the
Google
loop, you
Gemini?
get better output. Oh, I use both. I use ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini, and I have things that I, prefer on each one. Like if I'm going to do something with images, which would never be public facing for an arts organization, brainstorming background, it's Gemini all the way. I love ChatGPT's custom tools the most. And then, of course, if you're like building something complicated or a prototype, it's Claude all the way. So we're agnostic over here. I do tend to lean a little more ChatGPT and Gemini, but they all
Yeah,
kind of
back
do
to
the
the
same
prompts
thing as
matter.
long as you find one that you're comfortable with and really get to use it.
And to your point, they do have their strengths. And I think that is a very well-respected way to use the variety of tools is for each of those particular use cases. So I must get into, because I too am a theater nerd and it is my first love in this world. And, looking at your career, I can't help but admire the fact that you've been able to keep the arts and this love of yours intertwined into your career and bringing it into your roles and work. So what's your advice for maybe some lovers of the entertainment and arts, or maybe it's they love sports, or maybe it's they love, something completely like logistics? How do you bring your passion into your work?
I just feel so lucky that my path has been what it has been. But I would say don't give up and figure out how to mix the thing you love with a long-term career. I'm also a realist. I went into college. I had a theater degree and I made myself get a business degree too because I wanted to find the business end of theater, which I guess I've done. So I think it's really about just find what you're passionate about and find a way
That's
to
a great answer.
incorporate
That's a
that
great
in
answer.
whatever way you can and don't give up. Talk to people who are doing the thing you want to do in the industry that you love, because building connections and building a network and also understanding what that actually means doing those jobs.
Like, would I actually like that? Let's see what their day-to-day is like. Let's actually figure it out. I connect with that so much because I went into college thinking I was going to be a theater major. I'm like, I need the business, so I became a film major. I mean, they say to everyone in the arts, you have to want to do it more than anything else. So it applies here of just never give up and find those connections. And it's definitely an
I
admirable
can't beat
career
that. That
journey
was a
that
great
you've had
question.
for sure.
Jen,
So
thank you
thank you
so
for
much
sharing
for
that
your
wisdom.
time. The
Adam,
reading
any
list
other
is now I'm going
questions?
to have like 5 more things to read every week because I'm going to subscribe to your reading list. It's a good list.
Well, thank you
Amazing.
so much for having me. It's been so great to see you again, Amanda. And
Good to
Adam,
see
lovely to chat with you as well.
you. So great to see you, Jen, and so happy for you and excited to continue following your career journey and what y'all continue to build out over there at CI. And yeah, great to catch up. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, please leave a review wherever you listen to this and share with someone trying to grow their career or their business. Until next time, keep growing.